The NHS is okay. We're not going to get overwhelmed. So let's just start looking at a plan to get out, getting rid of some of the more stupid things like the fire break in Wales, for example, and some of the other things out there that are completely illogical. The trouble is politicians have loved their little act of power that they've had over us over the last few months. And it's got to come to an end. And not only that, why lock down at all? The BBC, the main media papers, especially the broadsheets, love reporting negative findings.
Another day and another negative headline by the mainstream media. This morning, the BBC, Sky and other outlets were reporting on how the antibodies are falling. Well, they were never supposed to be permanent anyway, but the reality of how the aspects of our immune system, including T cells, actually create long-term and permanent immunity, the mainstream media didn't report that. But to discuss this, we have a special guest on today's show. We have Professor Carol Sikora, who is an oncologist, the founding dean of the University of Buckingham Medical School, but most importantly, a voice of reason and common sense, actually representing logic in this debate, but also optimism. Before we actually go to Professor Sikora, I just wanted to say, make sure to watch to the end of the video because I am going to make an announcement for you guys and a campaign. So let's go to Professor Sikora. So let's talk about what's happening right now, because obviously we have all these ongoing lockdown measures, and today we had in the mainstream media headlines about how the antibodies obviously aren't really permanent or long-term, and but they went with that, obviously just the negative part of the headline, but there was some sort of positive news inside it, right?
There is. I'm here sitting in full lockdown in deepest Wales, believe it or not, today. We have a cancer centre in Newport in South Wales, and I'm here today and talking to you from this very locked down and very wet town. Wales is always wet, unfortunately. Right. I think that there's a lot of negativity in the news. It's almost as though the BBC, the main media papers, especially the broadsheets, love reporting negative findings. And today the negative thought is that antibodies don't last. In other words, you get infected, antibodies go up. We know they peak at 6 weeks and then they fall, and they do fall, and we've known that all the time because other mechanisms cut in. So T cell immunity is more important in the long term for defending us against future viruses. I mean, the interesting thing is the data come from a paper published from Imperial College survey that's ongoing of patients, but Public Health England publish every week the same stuff, looking at a whole series of people in different parts of the country. Some have been infected, some haven't, and it looks at the average antibody level. So it's not new news. It's just presented in the most negative way possible. And it's not good for our minds to have negative news every day.
No, of course. So, I mean, so what you're saying is that in our immune system, there are aspects of it, including the T cells, that play a role when it comes to immunity, right?
There's lots of things we don't understand. It's an interaction of antibodies, then T cells, and then other cells which also play a role. And what's important in one person may not be so important in another. And your experience and my experience for our immune systems is very different. We've been exposed to different things, partly because of our preference, what we like, partly because of our activities, and probably partly because of our genetics. And so all that melds into how the immune system functions.
Right, okay. I mean, that takes us to all these recent lockdown measures, especially the recent complicated ones. You've been quite outspoken about, obviously, the way they've been presented. What do you think? How do you think it's all going with all the traffic light measures, tier 1, 2, 3?
I think we've got into a completely crazy situation. We're not that big a country. Okay, we've got 4 countries within one country, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and England. And to each of us have different measures in play, totally different measures. It's just complete craziness. And it reflects a sort of almost dictator-like state of Scotland and Wales wanting to do their own thing. They're never going to prove they're better. I'm sitting in Wales today and it's totally locked down, sort of. I mean, when I say say totally, you're not allowed to go to someone else's house. I'm allowed to go to work here, and all the people here in the cancer centre are allowed to come to work, but I'm not allowed to go out for lunch, for example. I'm not allowed to go to someone's house for a coffee. And if I had a relative here, I couldn't visit them. And that's the problem. And yet, and if I had children, they would count as relatives. So, I'm completely stuck here. Whereas if I go back to England, which is only half an hour away across the Severn Bridge, totally different rules apply. And again, very complex layers, tiers of systems that I don't think anybody understands the logic.
Yeah, and that takes us to other ideas and solutions, such as herd immunity. I know a lot of people who are obviously not experts have been using that without actually knowing the details. So on the one side, obviously are seeing it as a bad word or a bad idea, and then the other side think it's just an easy solution, black and white. Is there a balance?
Yeah, herd immunity has got a bad name at the moment. Although what one's really trying to do is to protect the vulnerable. Something like 70% of those that actually get the virus won't have any symptoms at all. Another 20% will get some sort of symptoms, very mild, like the common cold. We get it every winter. We get some infection. You just feel lousy for a few days and then you pick up. We have the choice. Let the virus out gently, not just letting it rip, but gently, allowing it to spread, give immunity to people, measure the immunity, and at the same time keeping those that are vulnerable as protected as possible. But in the long term, it's the number. Is the NHS going to be overwhelmed? It won't be overwhelmed. This is a totally different picture than what we saw in April, when it did have the risk of being overwhelmed, but it didn't then. It certainly won't be now.
You have actually tried your best to advise with your other colleagues, kind of obviously send suggestions to the government. Have you heard anything back, any discussions?
No, we've had nothing back. Everyone has. There are ways of discussing this, and normally in science it's all very civilized. You discuss things in a civilized way. This is polarized, and it's polarized by politics. It's polarized by belief, and I guess it's polarized by how much you'd want to defend the economy. I'm an oncologist, so I get criticized for what do you know about epidemiology of viruses? And I say nothing, but look, if you carry on with this policy that you have, we end up lots of saving of lives, but you're going to lose lives from cancer, stroke, heart attacks. So you're trading one life off for another.
Are there things that people can just do, small things, to help, obviously, like in society at this point?
I think that the government rules and the advice is really sensible, and they cost nothing. The mask issue is politicization, but let's do it in public spaces where we can't avoid each other, like a train or so on. That's the mask. The washing hands is important. When you get off public transport, wash your hands before you go into the house, and certainly every time before you eat, to avoid that. And then I think the other thing that's important is, if you do have a temperature, don't go outside until it's sorted out. Don't go to work, don't try and do anything. And that's the difficulty, because for a lot of people, especially people on the lower incomes, they're paid by the hour for being there. They're not paid if they stay at home and not working. And that's where government help could be sorted out, so that people that do have symptoms are likely to be positive, sort of made to stay at home in a way that's positive for them. They're given money to stay at home, at least the wage they would have earned if they'd gone out. And that's something we've not really looked at. So the Eat Out to Help Out initiative is great for the middle classes and the rich. They can go to their fancy restaurants in Mayfair and so on and have £100 meals and nice bottles of champagne. It's a waste of money in terms of public health. What would be much more better if an Uber driver can't go to work because he's got a temperature, and he's paid £12 an hour. Let's make sure we pay him the £12 an hour. That would do a lot more to keep the public health circle enclosed, basically.
That's a very good point. And finally, I think one reason that people are getting frustrated isn't necessarily actual measures. It's just the fact that from what they see or hear on the media and the government is that they don't hear any exit strategy or any end goal. Can you be more positive? Can you see any light at the end of the tunnel right now?
My belief is what's going to happen over the next few days, we're going to see a clear plateau in hospital admissions. So you can then say the NHS is okay. We're not going to get overwhelmed. So let's just start looking at a plan to get out. And the plan to get out is not a sudden liberation of everything, but just a gradual liberation of getting rid of the rule of six, getting rid of some of the more stupid things like the fire break in Wales, for example, and some of the other things out there that are completely illogical. The trouble is politicians have loved their little act of power that they've had over us over the last few months, and it's got to come to an end. And in any democracy, we've got to allow people to come to their own decisions, and if they come to the wrong decision, well, they have to take the risk of that. And I think we're not a military police state, and we never will be here. In some European countries, it's a little bit, there's even more sort of force being used to make people obey. But I think a balanced view is what we'll do here. And if the numbers of people going into hospitals start dropping, then we really are out of the second wave. And the third wave, it may be a little blip. It's not going to be much more than that. So we can move forward and get out of this completely.
That's a fair point. And on that note, where can people find you on Twitter, for example?
So I'm Prof. Carol Sikora on Twitter. And I'm a new boy on Twitter, so I'm a bit slow at dealing with it, but I get there. My kids help me,
Well, you're doing really well. I think you have about 340,000 followers already, so you're doing something right.
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks again.
Not as good as President Trump.
No. One day you get there. Thanks again for coming on the show, Professor, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Well, that was definitely an interesting discussion, and as usual on this channel, we'll keep you guys posted on the latest news. But with everything else that's been going on with the Brexit negotiations and this crisis, I believe that the voice of a silent majority needs to be promoted. And that's why on this channel we have launched a new merch campaign called I Believe in Britain. Just check out the link in the description, click on it, and you'll find a whole new range of products from t-shirts, and also because it's winter, we have introduced hoodies. You got the various colors, and as you can see, the front promotes our beautiful country, and at the back we are representing a silent majority and 52%. So make sure to get your products, support this campaign, and keep the message alive. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell next to it. I'm Tousi, and I'll see you guys in the next video.